Have you ever noticed how certain people seem to walk into any room and instantly gain respect without lifting a finger? They're never interrupted mid-sentence, their opinions carry weight, and no one dares to waste their time. What separates them from the crowd? What makes others instinctively treat them differently? The truth might sting a little, but here it is. Their influence has very little to do with being smarter, richer, or more talented. Instead, they've mastered a principle of human psychology that most people ignore. And once you grasp it, you'll never be looked at the same way again. Think about your own life. Someone skips the line in front of you, and you stay silent. A friend bails on you for the third time, and you brush it off with a smile. A coworker takes credit for your work, and you swallow your frustration because you don't want to cause trouble. What's really happening here? Without realizing it, you're teaching others that it's perfectly fine to disrespect you. You're setting the standard of how low they can go without consequences. Meanwhile, the individuals who never face this problem aren't simply lucky. They're applying an ancient truth that has been whispered through history, a truth Machiavelli himself wrote about centuries ago. Respect is never given freely. It is claimed, enforced, and protected. Here's the paradox. So many people believe that being liked is the path to being respected. They think if they're agreeable, polite, and accommodating, others will admire them. But in reality, the opposite happens. The more you chase approval, the less value you hold. Approval seeking is like a beacon of weakness. People sense desperation, and desperation never inspires respect. It repels it. The ones who command true authority are rarely the ones trying hardest to be liked. They are the ones who are perfectly fine standing alone, and that's what makes people lean in when they speak, obey when they act, and remember when they leave. Let's strip it down further. The hidden weakness of trying to be liked is that it makes you predictable. If people know you're afraid to lose their approval, they already know how to manipulate you. They know you'll laugh at jokes that cut you down. They know you'll agree to plans that waste your time. They know you'll nod your head even when you disagree deep inside. And the moment you become predictable, you also become replaceable. What's easy to obtain is rarely valued. What's hard to access becomes priceless. So when you hand your power away in exchange for approval, you've already lowered your worth in everyone's eyes. Now, let's look at the real source of respect. It's not about showing off wealth, knowledge, or achievements. Those may impress, but they don't command respect. Respect grows from boundaries, from the unshakable stance that you will not tolerate being treated beneath your standard. It emerges the moment you show that your time, energy, and presence have value, and that anyone who violates those terms pays a cost. Without consequence, boundaries are meaningless. People test limits every day, consciously or unconsciously. If crossing you costs nothing, they'll keep doing it. If it costs them access, opportunities, or your support, they'll think twice before trying it again. That's why the harsh truth is this. The nicest people often get treated the worst. Why? Because they've conditioned everyone around them to understand that disrespect carries no penalty. They've made themselves a safe target. But the individuals who flip the script, who draw the line and enforce it, suddenly transform how the world sees them. Words get chosen more carefully around them. Behavior adjusts. They are seen as people who matter because they've made it clear they won't tolerate anything less. Machiavelli famously said it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Misunderstood by many, he wasn't endorsing cruelty. He was pointing out that human psychology responds more powerfully to consequences than to kindness. Fear, in this sense, is not terror. It is awareness of cost. When people know that mistreating you carries a price, they instinctively respect you more. And this is what separates the respected from the ignored. But let's push even deeper. Every single interaction in your life is a negotiation of control. Who controls the conversation? Who dictates the terms of the relationship? Who gets to decide the outcome? If you don't know the answer, it usually means you're not the one in control. And most approval seekers give up control without realizing it. Every time you bite your tongue when you want to speak, you hand over control. Every time you say yes when you meant no, you surrender control. Every time you act in a way that betrays your real self just to be accepted, you've sold control of your life to someone else's opinion. People who don't chase approval hold the upper hand. They're willing to speak their truth, even if it offends. They act according to their principles, even if others disapprove. They set terms instead of waiting for terms to be set. This is what psychological freedom looks like. It's not about being rebellious for the sake of it. It's about refusing to let others dictate your identity. Once you detach from the need for constant validation, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is power because it keeps others from easily manipulating or controlling you. This shift changes everything. First, manipulation stops working. No one can guilt trip you if you don't need their approval. No one can shame you if your self-worth isn't tied to their opinion. Second, your clarity skyrockets. You no longer ask, what will make them happy? Instead, you ask, what aligns with my principles? What serves my goals? That is the mindset of someone in control. Third, your relationships evolve. Some people will vanish because they can no longer exploit your need to be liked. That's not a loss, it's a filter. The people who remain will be the ones who respect you, not because you bent for them, but because you stood firm. This is the transformation, from I hope they like me to I don't need them to like me. From I wonder what they think to I know what I think. From I crave their approval to they must earn my respect. When you embody this shift, you stop being everyone's backup plan and start being someone's only choice. Respect doesn't come from begging, it comes from building unshakable standards and enforcing them without hesitation. The most respected people in history didn't beg for recognition. They didn't soften their voice to fit in. They didn't lower their standards to make others comfortable. They simply lived by rules that made them immovable. People who refused to compromise their core values became legends, while those who tried to please everyone were forgotten. Respect, once claimed, creates a self-reinforcing cycle. The more you command it, the more natural it becomes to demand it. And the more you live with it, the more people expect it from you. That cycle is the difference between being walked on and being remembered. So ask yourself, will you keep trading your strength for approval? Or will you embrace the discomfort of saying no, of enforcing your worth, of living by boundaries that others may resent, but that ultimately set you free? Because the moment you stop kneeling for approval is the moment you rise into power. Have you ever noticed how easily people can control those who constantly seek validation? The need for approval is not just a quirk of personality, it functions like an addiction. Every time someone praises you, clicks like on your post, or tells you you're special, your brain rewards you with dopamine. That same chemical is what makes drugs so addictive. It gives you a temporary high, and once the high fades, you crave another hit. The cycle begins again, pulling you deeper into dependency. Here's the darker side of this cycle. People around you learn the pattern quickly. They realize that with just a small dose of validation, they can make you act however they want you to sacrifice your evening to finish their project. A quick, "You're the most reliable person I know" will do the trick. Want to borrow your money? A comment about your generosity is enough. Want to get away with hurting you? All they have to do is butter you up by calling you so understanding. Without realizing it, you become a puppet, and your strings are pulled with compliments. The harsh truth is this: the more desperate you are for approval, the easier it becomes for others to exploit you. They don't need to threaten you. They don't need to force you. All they need to do is hand out scraps of validation, and you'll bend over backward. That's why approval addiction is one of the most dangerous weaknesses a person can have. It hands other people the manual to your brain. Now, compare this with someone who doesn't depend on validation. You can't control them with flattery because they don't need your praise. You can't manipulate them with acceptance because they don't crave your approval. You can't twist their emotions against them because their self-worth isn't tied to your opinion. That's why people who are free from this addiction seem untouchable. They're harder to influence, harder to control, and paradoxically, more respected. Think about the economy of validation. It's cheap to give, but costly to need. Anyone can say, "You're amazing," or "You're the best." It takes zero effort. But for someone hooked on validation, those words feel like oxygen. They become dependent on something that is completely outside their control. It's like handing over the keys to your happiness to everyone around you, then waiting for them to decide whether you get to feel good about yourself today. That's not just weakness, that's slavery. Machiavelli warned against this centuries ago. He argued that those who spend their energy trying to live up to other people's expectations instead of their own reality end up destroying themselves. In practice, here's how it looks. The approval addict constantly shapeshifts. They act differently depending on who they're with. They alter their opinions to match the group. They hide parts of themselves to avoid criticism. Over time, they stop being a real person and become a collection of masks. On the other hand, the individual who refuses to live for approval stays steady, no matter the environment. Their values don't shift depending on who's watching. They say what they believe, not what others want to hear. They don't dilute their authenticity to fit in. And ironically, this raw honesty makes them far more respected than the people-pleasers who sacrifice themselves to be liked. Authenticity, not approval, builds respect. Of course, breaking free from approval addiction isn't easy. Your brain will fight you. It will whisper that without other people's acceptance, you'll end up alone. It will make you feel guilty for not caring about every opinion. It will drag you back toward the comfort of validation. That's when discipline becomes your weapon. You must choose to stand firm, even when every fiber of you wants to chase approval. You must be willing to be disliked, misunderstood, and criticized. You must place more value on your own judgment than on the opinions of everyone else combined. If you want to reclaim your power, adopt these principles. First, say less and act more. Most people talk endlessly, explain themselves too much, and justify every choice. But the more you explain, the weaker you look. Those who truly command respect use fewer words and stronger actions. They don't lecture others about their boundaries, they simply enforce them. They don't argue about their choices, they stick to them. Machiavelli compared this duality to being both a fox and a lion, clever enough to avoid traps, strong enough to intimidate predators. Second, never chase approval. The moment you start trying to win someone's attention or affection, you lose leverage. Don't double text someone who ignores you. Don't explain yourself to people who aren't listening. Don't beg for respect from those unwilling to give it. Chasing broadcasts desperation, and desperation always kills respect. Instead, cultivate indifference. If people value you, fine. If they don't, it changes nothing. This calm detachment is magnetic. It makes people wonder why you don't need them, and that mystery makes them value you more. Third, stay calm when under fire. Manipulators thrive on emotional reactions. If they can make you angry, defensive, or upset, they've proven they own your emotions. But if you remain composed, even amused when attacked, you show everyone watching that you are immune to control. Psychological armor is terrifying to those who depend on emotional manipulation. Fourth, be unpredictable. Predictability makes you easy to control. If people know exactly how you'll respond, they can engineer situations to manipulate you. Instead, keep them guessing. Sometimes be generous, sometimes be reserved, sometimes be available, sometimes be distant, sometimes help, sometimes refuse. When you are hard to predict, you are hard to control. Machiavelli said that if you must choose between being loved and feared, choose fear, it's safer. Translated into modern life. Don't be predictable in your kindness or your cruelty. Be both, strategically. Fifth, enforce boundaries immediately and quietly. The strength of a boundary is measured not by the words you attach to it, but by how swiftly you enforce it. Don't warn endlessly. Don't keep giving second chances. Don't explain why someone's behavior was wrong. Simply implement the consequence and move on. People learn quickly that your limits are real, not suggestions. Sixth, use scarcity as a power multiplier. Many believe that being constantly available makes them more valuable. It doesn't. Abundance breeds indifference. Scarcity breeds desire. The less accessible you are, the more people respect your presence. The less often you say yes, the more weight your yes carries. When you give unlimited time, attention, and forgiveness, people stop valuing them. But when you ration them carefully, they become priceless. This principle explains why the most influential people are rarely the most available. They don't attend every event, answer every message, or meet every demand. Their distance makes their presence valuable. Their scarcity makes them magnetic. As Machiavelli noted, people judge more by appearances than reality. The less of you they see, the more they imagine, and curiosity is power. But here's the catch. Not everyone will survive this shift. When you start valuing yourself, some people will disappear, those who only stayed because they could exploit you. That's not a loss, that's purification. What remains are the relationships rooted in respect, not convenience. These are the connections worth keeping. Distance also gives you perspective. When you're not consumed with managing everyone else's opinions, you finally see what matters to you. When you're not enslaved to approval, you can focus on goals that align with your vision, not their expectations. That's why powerful people often seem detached. They aren't cold, they're free. They understand that emotional distance is necessary for clear thinking and decisive action. So what happens when you integrate these lessons? You stop begging for recognition and start commanding respect. You stop twisting yourself into whatever shape others demand and begin standing firm as yourself. You stop being pulled by every opinion and start moving according to your own compass. That is how you rise above manipulation. That is how you become unshakable. Because in the end, respect is not handed to you. It's taken, reinforced, and defended. Approval is fleeting, but authority lasts. And the moment you break your addiction to validation, you stop being controlled by others and start controlling yourself. When you stop chasing the shallow comfort of being liked and step into the solid ground of being respected, everything in your life begins to shift, and I mean everything. Some connections will fall apart, because people who once thrived on manipulating you will no longer have that power. But the relationships that remain will be richer, stronger, and rooted in authenticity. People will connect with the real you, not the polished mask you used to wear for approval. Your confidence also rises in a way that no external validation could ever provide. This isn't fake bravado that collapses when someone disapproves. This is self-assurance, built on knowing your value is not negotiable. You no longer waste energy second-guessing yourself, because the opinions of others stop dictating your choices. With that shift, opportunities begin to find their way to you. Instead of you scrambling to prove yourself, people approach you because they recognize your clarity, your honesty, and your refusal to settle for scraps. They trust you because you won't just tell them what they want to hear, you'll tell them what they need to hear. Life also becomes lighter. The stress of constantly monitoring how others feel, how they perceive you, and whether you've upset someone starts to evaporate. Simplicity returns when you're no longer enslaved to the exhausting cycle of approval and disapproval. And the greatest reward? True psychological freedom. You no longer feel the pressure to adjust who you are depending on the room you're in. You stop apologizing for your authenticity. You walk through the world with quiet strength. Machiavelli once said, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." In other words,